Hello, and welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and I'm a congenital amputee of the right hand. In this show, I will interview other amputees and allow them to tell you their incredible life stories. I'll also feature family members of amputees and others who support the amputee community, all in an effort to discuss the challenges and triumphs of those living with limb loss. So stick around and listen to inspirational stories and find out why we say, We're Not Stumped. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and today I got Benjamin Woodford, PhD, on. I'm very honored about that. 20 years ago, an accident changed Dr. Woodford's or Dr. Ben's life forever, but because of this incident, he has invented a product that's revolutionizing the wheelchair community. We're going to get into that today and more with Dr. Ben, but first of all, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be on the We're Not Stumped podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Mike. It's a really cool thing you're putting together, and I'm happy to be part of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks
We always
for having
start
me
the
on.
oh, it's my pleasure. We
Yeah.
always start the podcast with a segment I call "In Your Own Words." So I'd love the listeners to know a little bit more or a lot more about you.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you mentioned that I've been in a wheelchair for a little over 20 years now, and I had a skiing accident. So, like many of us, it was rather than a birth, I don't know what you would call it, a birth
Yeah,
disability. It was
sure.
a acquired disability later in life. And, after that, I started going to school and kind of working my way. I actually dropped out of high school when I was 16, little known fact about me.
Wow.
And I worked construction for a lot of years. And then once I broke my back, I figured I had to do something with my mind. And so I started back in school. I went to junior college and then university and then got a teaching credential. And then I taught high school for a while. And then I ended up going to grad school to get my PhD. And as soon as I finished my PhD, I pretty much started this company to be able to create these things we're calling paraboards for people like me that use wheelchairs and want to be able to kind of have some fun. And that's like, the very short version of it. But
Yeah, and I want to make sure paraboards.com if people want to learn more about what this is about. But I want to learn more about this because we had a little pre-conversation. I was talking about some of the videos you have on your Facebook page where there's a dog that's running next to you. I believe it's
oh
you.
yeah. Yeah.
It's an amazing product. Can you talk a little bit about that product?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So let me tell you how it came about and where this whole
Love it.
thing came from. So paraboards.com, right? Para, like Paralympics, boards like skateboards, right? Um, so where this came about 7 years ago, people really started riding all these electric vehicles, right? Electric scooters, electric skateboards, just a whole slew of electric unicycles. And I saw these people riding around, zipping around so fast. They get a little remote in their hand and they're just zooming down the road. And I'm like, I could just park my wheelchair right on top of one of those and at least go in a straight line really fast, right? And that seemed like fun. But then I'm like, maybe I can do a little better than that. So I actually bought some parts and just started tinkering. And the first one was just a joke. I mean, I literally just like strapped a skateboard to the bottom of a piece of wood or like two skateboards to the bottom of a piece of wood and drove them. And I was like, okay, this sucks, but it kind of works, right? So then I went back to the drawing board and brought in a friend who's a fabricator, another friend who's an engineer, and got some drawings made up. And I made basically a prototype, the first prototype of the paraboard. And I strapped it to my chair and I drove it for 2 years without a single trouble. I'm flying, doing this. This one did about 18 miles an hour. And I'm like flying down paths and carving trails and just having a blast, right? But I start to notice as I'm riding around, people are taking out their phone and videotaping me, and little kids are running up and being like, Mommy, Mommy, what's that? That's so cool. Oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. And if you're like, disabled, and you have like children wowing in awe instead of, Mommy, why is that person using a wheelchair? That's a big deal, right? It's a really big feeling. And I noticed this happening so often. I'm like, I feel like other people should have the chance to ride this thing, right? And I had people coming up to me offering me money to invest and just like very interested in this thing and videotaping me at random. I'd pull over and get videos from strangers that are just taking their phone out because it's cool, right?
Yeah.
And they've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few years, I tried a few different revisions and kind of got to the end of that prototype's lifespan, I would say. And I'm like, okay, this was good, but we can do better, right? And I did another couple of revisions where I basically paid friends to just fabricate variations on what I was doing to get closer. And I eventually got to where I was like, okay, this is a pretty good working prototype. It's not like it's not something I could sell, but it's a pretty darn good proof of concept that I've got like a real thing here, right?
Yeah.
And now it's been about a year since I got to that point. I incorporated the company myself and started it up. And I've taken on a couple of partners now. I have an engineer and a fabricator who actually happen to be the first two that started helping me with the project in the very beginning. And we've got a production level product now that we can put together and sell and make a lot of different variants with batteries and motor sizes and different configurations for different types of chairs. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting to see. And now the current version we're working on does 25 miles an hour.
Wow.
It's got electromagnetic braking, regenerative braking. Um, it's fun. I've been riding the newest production level model for the last few weeks, and it's like it's the best it's ever been. And I can just fly. I take my dog on these like epic runs, and she's just full sprinting next to me. And I'm passing people on their bicycles and on their scooters, and they're just like, "What? What just happened?" Because it's so small. It just sits right underneath the front of your wheelchair. You can barely tell it's even there. So I end up just zooming down the street and everyone's like, what just happened? So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been quite a process and an evolution getting to where we're at now. But now we can do custom colors and custom art and all kinds of stuff. And we're really excited.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about how it attaches. I'm going to, if people are listening on the
Yeah.
podcast, I'm going to certainly put any video I can on the YouTube version of it. But for people that are listening, if you don't mind
Mhm.
describing how that attaches, because it's
Oh,
pretty neat.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I think most people have a hard time visualizing it really. Even once they've seen it, they're like,
Yeah.
I don't understand, right? And that's one of the challenges we have, which is kind of why I'm doing stuff like this, is that when people have never seen anything like it, it's hard for them to wrap their head around it, right? They're like, okay, I use a wheelchair. I've seen a few of the kind of competing devices, if you want to call them that. But the comparisons don't really make sense for what we've built here is really it's a small board, just about the size of your wheelchair, and it's shaped kind of like a T. And on that T, we call it the hammerhead design or the diaper design, right? It's kind of like shaped like a diaper. And you just roll up to it and you set the foot plate of your chair right on top of a special mount we created, which is very slick. You just kind of roll up, clip yourself into the mount, and then you have essentially a front wheel drive wheelchair. And it doesn't drive like it doesn't have articulating steering like a mobility scooter, right? And we don't consider it a mobility device even. It has straight rail like tractor steering. So you essentially you push it a lot like you push a wheelchair. Instead of pushing your wheels, you push left side or right side, and that's how you kind of steer it, right?
Okay.
And it's really fun because it's got tons of power. It weighs itself to the ground. It's only about this far off the ground.
Yeah.
All the weight is just right at the very bottom of your chair now. And you can like lean in that thing and hook turns. You have enough power, you can fishtail your chair out behind it. Like it's wild. It really is. And also you can go like 2 miles an hour and just roll down the sidewalk with your friends and they're walking, you're rolling. Sometimes you speed up a little bit when you're hitting like turns because it's easier to turn it with a little bit of speed. But honestly, it's just very versatile and it has more power than anything out there. I mean, if you put this thing up against wattage wise, against any mobility device, I guarantee we're 3 times more powerful than what they have because we didn't build a mobility device. We built an electric vehicle for people who use a mobility device.
Yeah,
And
and
I
again,
think
I'm talking to Doc. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt
oh
you?
yeah, no, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm talking to Dr. Benjamin Woodford,
Mhm.
PhD, and he can be found at paraboards.com. Is that correct? I
Absolutely.
want to make
Yeah.
sure we get that out. You've done so much in your life too. I know that you're a radio host for a lot of years. You said you were in
Yeah.
construction. Plus, as we talked about a little earlier, I want to learn more about this disability work at Stanford. So I want to talk a little bit more about your personal history and what led you up to this great invention.
Sure, sure. I mean, I've always been a tinkerer, honestly. I had a show car that I built for a lot of years, and it had a, 400 plus horsepower turbo custom engine and custom transmission and racing brakes. And I won a lot of trophies with car shows, doing that.
What kind of car? I love cars, so I got to know
It was
what kind.
actually a Volvo 850R station wagon. So it's a rare one, which is why we got a lot of attention at car shows. I'd
That's
roll
cool. I'm gonna
up
look that up.
and it was like custom engine. Everything was very,
Wow.
very much flashy. But, it got me like understanding kind of customizing things in general. I built all kinds of cool stuff for that car, just like, a custom airbox and a custom X box that fit in the glove box. And had custom hand controls on it and just everything you could imagine because I had the car for, 10 or 15 years. It adds up, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of like what gave me the impetus to be able to design the board. But also, I was in Silicon Valley. I was going to school at Stanford. I'm surrounded by this entrepreneurial spirit and taking, ed tech entrepreneur classes while I'm in school and doing a lot of different things that are very much, I mean, my radio show, right? I started the radio show with just me, bringing in one guest at a time. And a few years later, I was the training director for the radio station. And I had a whole team working on my radio show. So I had a co-host and some interns, and we had, people scheduling our guests at this point. And it all kind of fell apart when the pandemic hit, sadly, but that was okay. It was kind of probably has run its course by that time, one way or the other. So it was good. But um, yeah, and I think when I got out of school, I had this PhD from this fancy university, and that's cool, but I really wanted to do more to give back to my community. And this was one particular way I knew I had built something really special and that people had never really, as far as I can say, even never had an opportunity to have something that can go this fast and be this fun for this kind of a affordable price compared to what's out there. Most of the time, if you want to do fun things in a wheelchair, you need $30,000 and a whole support team to get out and do it. And it's like, that's good, but it's not really attainable. Like what I imagine for this paraboard thing is, you use it to get across town, you use it to ride with your friends, you use it to have fun and race your friends on the weekend, you want to use it to hit jumps or whatever, like you can do that and you can do it for pennies compared to what most like extreme sports cost. Like if you want to go out and buy a nice carbon fiber bike, just as an able-bodied person, that's 10 grand, like getting into any kind of sport is pretty expensive, right? And to me, this is something that is relatively low cost. Obviously, I can't give them away for free or I would, but it's relatively low cost. And for what you get to do with it, I think it's hands down just something that's a really powerful experience. And so I kind of segue that a little bit for us because when I was at Stanford, I taught this course called Diverse Perspectives on Disability. And it was a course basically to teach able-bodied people about the experience of disabled people, right? And so we would bring in 9 guests throughout the 10-week quarter, and they would talk about what kind of disability they had, what it meant in their life, the kind of things they have done with and without because of that disability. And, we have people who are coming for PhDs and masters in like health fields and care fields and social working fields. And they're coming in and they're really getting to have this very much like visceral, close, personal experience every week with somebody who has a disability and is willing to talk about it openly, kind of like we do on stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
And so I did this for a few years and I felt good because by the time I was done, I actually helped develop a course, which is now going to be on and off going to be taught at the Graduate School of Education, which is going to be like a more permanent thing because of this course. And people loved it and they were glad it existed, but they're starting to work on a disability studies minor, and this course would be part of that. So it'll be like an official canon course that should be there forever now, hopefully, or something like that. So yeah.
What did you learn from others as the able bodies you were saying that were in
Mhm.
there, I don't know, interviewing or learning from people
Yeah.
with a disability? What were some of the takeaways that you learned from them? What are the things they didn't
You know,
realize?
I mean, the thing that stands out to me the most is how much they just realize that like we're just people. And you'd think that's obvious, right? You would think it's completely obvious that disabled people are just people and we all have our things. And, I think it's just the class really taught me the power of bringing down that fear of the unknown, right? Because these people would sit in class week after week and get exposed to these conversations and have access to ask questions, like candid questions, in a way that they never really had. And then once they had that opportunity, they're like, wow, you can just do that in general, and people are just people. You're not some other class we need to keep our hands off of, but you're just like, just ask you what you need and you'll probably tell us, right? And that seems really obvious, but also I think there's an air of paternalism in American society towards disability where they think they need to protect us and keep us safe and sort of be gentle with us because we're fragile or something. And obviously, I think it's exactly the opposite. If you ask me, I mean, I think disabled people are some of the most hardy and resilient and resourceful people you'll ever meet. And to me, I think that's also part of why I started the skateboard company or the paraboard company for making this skateboarding thing possible for wheelchair users. Is like we don't need little 5 mile an hour devices that just get us around and protect us from ever hurting ourselves. A lot of us hurt ourselves because we were extreme before we even started, right? Before we were even in the wheelchair or had a limb difference or something. We were there for a reason, right? We're swimming with sharks. Like it's not exactly like we're timid people. So I think I want to see that change and I want to see those attitudes change. And I think this is my, one little way I'm trying to take another slice out of that after the experience with teaching that course.
When I read on your website, Smiles Per Mile, I saw that on there, and everything, all the people that are on there, all the it just looks like fun. I'll just say it
It
looks
is.
like fun, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure it is.
It's a
What
lot of fun. I mean, yeah, that's the idea, right?
absolutely,
Smiles, we're trying to increase the smiles per hour. I think that was
miles
one.
per hour. That I think
Yeah,
that okay, yeah,
yeah.
that it was just so cool to see. Like I said, those videos, and again, I would just implore people to check out your Facebook, check out your website. Everything's linked off the website, paraboards.com. So go check it
Yeah,
out.
yeah. And people, if you're on the TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, we're kind of getting more videos up everywhere. I think we have the most on TikTok, but in general, we're just trying to get out there and trying to show people we exist. It's a new thing and it kind of takes a little bit to wrap your head around it. But I think for the people who ride wheelchairs and even if they don't want to be extreme, you can go 16 miles an hour real comfortably, 15 miles an hour real comfortably and then have a little speed if you need to get yourself out of a jam. And it doesn't have to be extreme. I think that's where a lot of people think, oh, I have to be some extreme sports person to ride this. And it's like, you just need to be able to work the controllers and do a wheelie in your chair, and you're pretty much going to be loving what you get after that. Yeah.
And I think if I saw correctly, the controller is in your hand. Is that correct?
Right. You actually hold two controllers, and one controls the left side, one controls the right. We are working on a single controller that like quadriplegics could control with their palm or something.
Hmm.
But I think as we get more developed and the product gets more refined, I think it's going to lose more than it's going to gain if you follow my drift. Like right now, it is raw and powerful and fun and responsive, and it's like strapping like a go-kart to your chair. And then you just go for it. And you could kill yourself if you want, but you can also like just ride that ragged edge as long as you want. And I'm like, I come back from a ride and I'm just pumping adrenaline the whole time, right? And I think all that's going to happen from here is that we're going to get, more features and all that. And it's going to get slower and more subdued. And I think that not that I want that, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to avoid that, but I think that's kind of the natural progression of an established company. So I'm excited for the people that buy the first few versions and are just like, hauling butt around and just have no idea, like no one else can just have any clue how much adrenaline fun they're having every day. So,
So if people do want to order it, I know there is an ordering process. Do you want to explain how that process works?
yeah, so I'll be honest with you. We shut down the actual like click and order on the website because the fees are huge and we're a small company.
Yeah.
And we're building custom for every customer at this point. So, one day we'll have a big production line or, lots of stock of boards. But right now it's like we're building each one individually for people. We'll do the colors and the art and everything just the way you want it. So I'm having people just put down like $100 deposit, and then I call them and I walk through the ordering process, and we, figure out their color combinations, and I kind of show them the options, and then we choose, battery sizes and the motor sizes and make sure it's really exactly what they want. And I do this personally for each person now. And if this catches on, I think it will, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for the people that see the possibilities for it. We'll probably get some like a more fancy website that has some, you can specify all your colors and have it kind of like visualized for you on the screen before you have it sent to you. And we're like working out so we can do custom prints. So every board has a different art print on it and stuff like that to make it like very customizable and unique and like match your chair and all of that stuff. So.
I saw that and I really like that. That's something that I didn't know that was even because I hadn't worn a prosthetic in 40 years, and I went to
Mhm.
some different trade shows and I saw that they're doing imprints on prosthetics and sleeves
Oh
and things
yeah.
like that. I was like, wow, that's pretty neat. So to see that you're doing that, personalizing these types of devices, I think is huge for the end user. Is that what you're
Well,
seeing?
yeah, well, it's where the wheelchair market has gone, and it's really funny because like, I was injured over 20 years ago, and I kind of saw all the equipment back then, and now I'm in the industry and I'm starting to see all the new equipment coming out and what everyone's doing, and it's I think where the industry has gone is like customization, custom colors, all that. Like your wheelchair is an expression of who you are, just like your prosthetics are. Right. And I mean, I think they're in the same category as far as like it's a very much integrated part of how you live your life. And I think it should be able to be customized. Just like you change your clothes, you want your chairs to match your mood, to match the occasion, right? And so yeah, and we've just kind of started that way from the beginning is like, we're sort of the mindset of like the old school skate culture, right? Where it's like the art was part of the board, right? We're actually thinking about right now about making like a little mural in the shop where we hang up a couple of the boards and maybe do like a connected art piece between the different boards or something because we think that's cool and we think that's, sort of part of what it's all about is having a culture behind it, not just like a product, right? But we want it to be a part of you. We want it to be an expression of you. We built one, we're building one we're sending out this week to this really cool gal, and she's got like her name and her little like logo and everything on her board. I designed the art for her with her input. And it's like it's really cool. It's fun to do even.
It's amazing. Like I said, it just makes people, I think the end users just love that. And I love that story you just told. What is something through the entrepreneurial journey that you went through that you learned that maybe you didn't know going in? Because there's a lot to there's a
Oh
lot to
yeah.
what you're doing.
Oh
I
yeah. Oh
can't
my
even scratch the
gosh. I mean,
surface.
I'm learning every day still. And, I've read a good 10 books to help me get started and talk to a lot of mentors and people who have done various levels of entrepreneurship. And I'm calling them constantly still like, hey, what do I do here? How do I do this? And it's fun for me. I've always loved learning, I mean, I got a PhD because I'm a glutton for punishment, right? I enjoy it's like I prefer the challenge of figuring it out than I do being done, right? Because once I'm done, I'm like, here it is, like publish it. I don't know, like I'm out, right? The fun part is for me is really figuring it out. So I've been digging in. I think, let's see, what's a good entrepreneurial lesson? I mean,
Like, how about getting a trademark? I don't know if you have one, but is that something you've looked into?
Okay, so the trademark is not too bad, and we haven't actually done that yet because we're not sure we're going to keep the logo that we have.
Makes sense.
But
Yeah.
we like the logo for now, and everybody seems to like it, but I think it'll evolve a little before it's like the final logo. But yeah, we've got our patent pending status, and that
There you
was
go.
quite a process. And learning the whole patenting process, it was quite an ordeal. But I think for me, the thing that I'd highlight is just the refinement process of building a product and how much really goes into that. I'm gonna take a tangent here with you if you don't mind,
No,
but
please.
just watch this show, this movie, Ferrari versus Ford. You seen that one?
I haven't seen the whole thing, but
Okay,
I
well,
know the
the
story.
idea, right, is they're trying to build a race car and they're doing all this testing and they got to be out there, countless hours testing it. And I watched that the other night and I'm like, that feels familiar, right? That feels very familiar because that's essentially what we've been doing since last December is refining, adding a lot of little things to make the board better, to make assembly better, to make manufacturing better, to make the handling better. And so it's like there have been days where we're in the shop and we weld up three different versions. And I take them out and I'm like, how quickly can I decide which one of these is better and why? And how quickly can I figure out the other variables that are going into why one is better than the other? And so it's like, we're testing it, we're coming back, we're ripping it apart, we're switching the parts out, we're doing it again. And this was going on for weeks some of the time, where it's just like day and day and day of just I got to go ride the crap out of this thing. I got to try to break it, right? I got to like see what it can do and how it's going to handle at the limit and how it's going to, can I get loose from it? Can I snap it? Is there anything that we can do better to make it handle better? And it's stimulating because you're thinking about your weight and you're thinking about the chair and you're thinking about the board and you're thinking about what would make it better and how you could like fix this without changing that and do this without doing that. And I think there have been a few falls along the way, a few I hope I didn't break anything. And I haven't, thank goodness. And I always wear my safety gear, which is a big selling point. And our motto for the company is have fun, ride safe, and don't break your back again. And I think that's words to live by, right? I've been trying to show that for everybody as well. But yeah, I think that's been like one of the most exciting things is just recognizing like how much work and time goes into it, but also the evolution of the product and how a product is not some stagnant thing that somebody just invents and puts on a shelf and now you buy it, right? But it's a living, breathing manifestation of the goal of what you're trying to build, right? And it really has been this evolution that just keeps getting better and better. And we got to a point now where we're like, okay, we're not going to make it any better no matter what we do at this point, other than getting feedback from other people and getting them riding, right?
That makes a
Uh,
lot of sense.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
I'm going to
yeah,
switch gears then for you
please.
because I'm sorry. The reason why I said I was talking about the entrepreneurial journey, but then you have your
Mhm.
personal journey, and you said you've been in the wheelchair for 20 years. So what are some of the things that you learned maybe before you were in the wheelchair? Now has your life has progressed now that you're in it, and you can impart some knowledge to people that may be going through their own journey very early on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, I got a funny story that I think addresses that. Before I was in the wheelchair, I was doing construction. And it turned out the bread and butter of the construction that I did was commercial construction, usually in like strip malls and commercial buildings, building largely handicap accessible bathrooms, right? And that was what I did is I built handicap accessible bathrooms.
Wow.
And before my injury, I used to sit there wrapping the heat tape on the bottom of the drain to make sure no one burns their legs and putting making sure everything's like within the right distances so you can reach grab bars. And I remember like, are there ever really disabled people that use this stuff?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know. And I think that's like how a lot of people exist about disability is they
Yeah.
just don't know. I mean, I literally, it was my job. I did it all the time. It was like every day I was building handicap accessible restrooms. I was an expert at it. And I didn't know the first thing about what it meant to have a disability or live in the world with or without these adaptations. And I literally just thought on a regular basis, like, do disabled people even need this stuff? Does this even real? Or am I just doing this to check some code book so that I can get, it signed off for the job? And
That's
then
a fascinating story. Yeah, continue.
yeah, yeah. And then I get to the other side of it, right? I have this near death experience and life-changing injury and years of rehab to get back into like a functional body that I can use in the world to exist. And then I go out and I realize like how far short we've fallen with disability access
Wow.
and for the provisions we need for it. Whereas I used to think like, am I doing this for nothing? And why am I putting all this energy and specificity into creating disability access when I never see a disabled person use it? What do I know? Right. And now I am the disabled person. And everywhere I go, I'm like, man, they messed up that. Oh, that's really nice. I wish they did that more places. Oh, I can't get in this place because this dumb little thing they didn't do or whatever. Right. And it's powerful to see it from both sides, right? It's powerful to understand
Yeah.
that like the ignorance that I brought into this experience and now like the deep appreciation I have for what those accommodations really mean to people that need them.
Yeah, and you describe the codes and things like, you're doing things to spec, but
Mhm.
now that you're to your point about getting user feedback for your boards, what do you think about those codes? I mean, did you, in retrospect, you look back and go, no, that's not right. We should do it this way. I don't know. I'm just
I
throwing
mean,
it
they're
out there.
they're you know they're largely pretty good, but
Okay.
they never go far enough. It's like, you have to have, for instance, like, certain public buildings have to have an automatic door opener to get into the building, right? And that's by law for ADA.
Hmm.
But often they have a second breezeway door right inside the first
Yeah.
breezeway door
Yeah.
that has no such requirement. And like, how silly does that look from to just a normal, rational person that you push the button to get in the first door and there's a second door and there's no button? And you're like, really? Like no
Yeah.
one, and it's not because they were ill-tempered or, trying to be mean or something. It's just because the law wasn't enough, right? We need also like caring, thoughtful people with common sense that are implementing the law with a good nature and an intention, right? And that's bigger than I think laws can really address. I think we need social cohesion and people willing to actually like understand their effects on other people to be able to make things like that happen. And that's more than the government we can rely on for, right?
Thank you for sharing that story, and thank you.
Yeah.
That was very well said. I appreciate that. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
So
as you look forward, I'm going to do a double-barreled question, which I shouldn't do, but I want to know two things.
I
As
can
you look
handle it.
forward, I know you can,
Yeah.
but it's like for both yourself and your
Mhm.
company, what are you looking forward to for the future of both yourself and the company?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I don't think I have talked nearly enough about this for what I see for paraboards, which is largely myself as well, because I've gone all in on seeing this thing through, which means the next 5 to 10 years, I'm pretty much in this paraboarding thing.
Great.
But what I see for paraboards coming up is we want to start a leaderboard where people can do competitive events and post competitive times and performances on our leaderboard, and start a nonprofit to be able to do that so we can keep like world records of people doing, the fastest mile in a wheelchair, fastest mile in a wheelchair on a paraboard, fastest 5 miles, fastest downhill descent, things like that. And long term, we'd really like to see paraboards being like an active sport in 12 countries, and when we can get a sport into the Paralympics. And I'd like to see something like a downhill street luge or relay racing and, things of that nature where we're incorporating the power aspect of something that was made really from the ground up as one of the few firsts, I think, that have been like a sport made for wheelchair users from the beginning instead of just sort of like doing sort of an approximation of someone else's sport, right? So
Yeah.
I want to see people jumping these things. I want to see them doing rail grinds. I want to see them doing, tricks. I want to see them wrecking them and needing me to build them a new one because they, did crazy stuff with them. And, there's going to be more injuries and that happens. And I think like disabled people have the right to make those decisions for themselves if they want to be crazy
Right.
still. Like
Right.
I want to build them the products that let them do that. And I want them to be, be fun and safe enough that if they want to temper their fun and actually, survive, great. If they want to take it to the extreme edge, like, able-bodied people do that every day. And I think that's our goal really is to keep making similarly cool devices that let people push the edge and don't cost too much. And, I'll tell you something interesting about paraboards that people don't really realize. if we went out of business tomorrow and you had one already, you could buy off the shelf parts and put them into your paraboard and make it work,
Wow.
which is rare
Yeah.
for us for wheelchair parts or disability oriented
Yeah.
parts. They always want proprietary parts
Yeah.
made by them that are completely overpriced.
Yeah.
And then they're the only ones that can work on it. And if they go out of business, you're screwed. And so when I started designing the paraboard, it was like, okay, modular parts from existing stock of things that you could buy even if we went under, that you could buy and have shipped to a third world country if you wanted to build one of these and run it off a solar panel in the heart of Africa, you could, and you could get parts
Wow.
for it. And that's like really what I think is beautiful about it is like we have the most power of any device of its kind. We have the most versatility as far as being able to rebuild, work on it yourself, source parts elsewhere if you want, right? I mean, obviously, I think like our parts are going to be parts we've sourced ourselves and we think are the best. And, we may charge slightly more, but if we ever went out of business and you already had a board, you could keep it running forever. And I think that's a really cool feature of it that is sort of, I think, hard to convey to people, but also powerful and really says a statement about like what we care about is we care about your experience. We care about your longevity of your product. We care about replaceability, and that is, I think, how we try to make our statements as a company is like, this is what we believe in because we're doing it, right?
Well, again, if you're listening, go to paraboards.com, find out more. There's so much to this story, and I know there's going to be so much more in the future.
Yeah.
I've taken a lot of your time today. This was Dr. Benjamin Woodford, PhD from paraboards.com. Unbelievable story. And I'm going to put you on the spot right now. In about a year, 6 months, next time you have something major in your company, I'd love to have you back on because I just know there's more to you and there's more to your company.
Mike, you know what? I would absolutely love that. And, follow along on our pages and I'll reach out to you if we have some big news coming up. I think we will, honestly. We got a lot of projects that are developing. So, I think, 6 months from now, a year from now, we're going to have a few other products, a few other designs, and a whole lot more people that are having fun riding them. So I'd love to be able to come back and update you about that.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's just a wealth of knowledge, and
Yeah.
congratulations on this fantastic product. And again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Appreciate you having me here.
That was the We're Not Stumped podcast, hosted by Mike Bolland. If you want to be a guest on the program, reach out to Mike at his email address, mike@mikeboland.com. This podcast is produced by One Hand Man Productions. If you are looking to start your podcast, go to onehandmanproductions.com.